All right, Tuesday edition of the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. You know the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. You guys can probably recite that all on your own about being the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. All at Panther-Lair.com. And of course, the video wing right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. We got a subscribe button right down there for you. And like this video as well. It always looks good and helps boost the numbers, makes YouTube like us, and helps spread the word about what we're doing here. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We appreciate it very much. We got a lot to get to. Pitt hosting Boston College tonight at the Peterson Event Center. A game the Panthers should win. We'll talk about that in a little bit and probably just for a few minutes because it's got something. I mean, you've already seen the headline probably on this video, so you know what our main subject is here. But we'll talk about Boston College. And we, of course, have to start off with the AP poll, which does not include Pitt once again. Panthers end up, I think, fourth, like effectively 29th. Place in terms of the points they got. Fourth highest points total among teams that didn't make the top 25, and there are all these teams ranked that Pitt beat, and they beat Northwestern, and they beat NC State, and they beat Virginia, and blah blah blah. Look, man, I sounded like Jeff Capel when I said that. Look, man, we're just focused on right now. The reality is, I mean, there's a couple realities here. The number one reality, which everyone understands and knows, is it doesn't matter. Like, the AP poll does not matter. The AP poll is not going to influence the seeding. Pitt is virtually, if not, realistically, or I guess I should say virtually, if not in totality, a lock for the NCAA tournament. It's really about seeding, and I don't think the AP poll is going to have as big of an impact on the seeding as Pitt's strength of schedule, the wins they've gotten, how they've done in the net rankings against quad 1 wins, quad 2 wins, how far, where they end up finishing in the ACC regular season, how far they get in the ACC tournament. Like, there's a lot of things that are going to impact Pitt's NCAA tournament seed that go well beyond the Associated Press poll. And so we know that it's sort of I don't even want to say like it's a beauty contest. It's something to talk about, which is ultimately, look, here we are. They got us. They got us. We're talking about it. Well, the other thing, though, is like I would put the headline on the front page, and you would talk about it, and you would tweet about it, and you might text your friends, and people would put out tweets, and there'd be articles on all the major outlets about Pitt breaks back into the poll for the first time in 7 years. But being ranked 24, nobody cares. That wouldn't really, that's not going to move the needle. That's a 40-degree day. And if you watch The Wire, you know what they say about a 40-degree day. Being ranked 24th is a 40-degree day. Now, you crack the top 20, you crack the top 15. Now we're talking about something different. We're going to have a barbecue over that. But 24th? Nobody cares about being ranked 24th. So instead of getting all worked up about whether they got left out or got ranked 24, realize that doesn't ultimately matter. Now, I mean, if it starts to become a question of how high they get ranked, I mean, then we can talk about it. But I don't think it's worth getting worked up about being 29th versus 24th. It ultimately isn't that big of a difference. Nobody cares that FAU is 25. FAU is not getting some big recruiting bump out of being 25th. There's nothing that's really being, there's nothing that's really happening there or being acknowledged if you get ranked 25th or 24th. I guess I say this just to say that they just don't care. And partially because it doesn't matter, and these things will all take care of themselves. The AP poll matters even less in college basketball than it does in college football. Part of it is that, and part of it is that it just doesn't matter if you're ranked 24th. It just doesn't move the needle for me. And aside from, oh look, Pitt is finally ranked. Nobody cares about being ranked 24th. There's no difference between 24th and 26th. The only difference is your name shows up on the list as opposed to also receiving votes. That's my thought on that. Pitt Boston College tonight. The Eagles come in at 12-14 overall, 6-9 in the in conference play right now. Pitt, of course, on a 5-game winning streak. Boston College lost on what day was that? Saturday. They lost by 30 to NC State at home. But that was after they won a game at Virginia Tech, which I think when we look ahead at Pitt's future schedule, we're kind of circling that Virginia Tech game, in Blacksburg as being potentially one of the dangerous games. I think there's, as people look at these final 6 games, we talk about, danger spots, the danger zone, and it's, that trip to Virginia Tech that's coming up, and then the regular season finale at Miami. Those are the 2 games that I was just having a conversation with someone yesterday about, those are the 2 games that you say, boy, they could go 4-2 down the stretch. Those would be the 2, the Virginia Tech and the Miami games would be the 2 that they potentially would lose or could lose, or maybe, I don't know, you might even say probably. Although I'm not betting against this team just yet. I'm going to see them. I'm going to have to see them falter a few times to, bet on them losing games. So Boston College, I think a little bit like Florida State, teams that have pretty shaky records, but you really can't overlook them. And Pitt learned that lesson very harshly against Florida State in the game at the Peterson Events Center. I don't think they overlooked Florida State, but they certainly had more respect for the Seminoles going into this past Saturday's game in Tallahassee. I think they would probably even, agree to that. And, ideally that first Florida State game serves as sort of a cautionary tale about what can happen against Boston College tonight at the Peterson Events Center. Can't overlook them. They have a very good player in Quentin Post, big man, who, as Jeff Cable talked about yesterday, is a skilled big man. Can get out, can score, can shoot threes, can dribble, and obviously he's very skilled around the basket. And so it's going to be a unique kind of challenge for Federico and Guillermo Diaz-Graham, and really those 2 guys, because those are the guys you're expecting to see the bulk of those minutes, playing at the center position and having to handle that assignment against Post. It's going to be a great challenge for Federico, who I think has been really good. And getting better over the course of the season and been really good over the last 5 games. I just looked at Federico's stats for our main topic of the day, which we'll get into. I just looked at his stats in these last 5 games, this 5-game winning streak. Federico, 6.4 points per game, 7 rebounds per game, 2.8 blocks per game, 1 assist and less than 1 turnover per game, 3.2 personal fouls per game, and playing almost 28 minutes per game. So 6.4 and 7 and 2.8 points, rebounds, blocks. Yeah, I mean, and playing 28 minutes per game. I always try to stay away from the, if I had told you in August, or if I had told you in October, if I had told you in December. But I mean, if I hate to do it, but if I had told you Federico would be playing 28 minutes per game or over the last 5, over a 5-game stretch in January and February of ACC contests, you would tell me that's bad. That's not a good thing, because none of us had any kind of expectations of him contributing anything approaching meaningful minutes this season. Maybe as the backup 5 behind John Hughley, and you hope you don't have to go to that very often. I mean, that's the reality of what we were all thinking this fall. Now he's putting up a more than respectable line of 6.7 rebounds and almost 3 blocks per game over the last 5. Not coincidentally a 5-game winning streak. And he has made big plays in almost all 5 of those games. It certainly was the case at Florida State on Saturday. And so I got to thinking, and again, you've seen the headline of this video. I don't have to bury the lead too much of what we're going to talk about here. But I got to thinking, probably over the weekend, I started thinking about it, of the newcomers. Pitt added 7 guys this offseason, 7 scholarship players. And I got to thinking about how would you rank them. Now it's 7, but we obviously have to sort of dismiss Dior Johnson from this conversation since he has not participated. So we're really looking at 6 guys. How would you rank the 6 newcomers based on their level of play, their contributions to the team, and how they've done so far? To remind you, it's the Diaz-Graham twins, Guillermo and Jorge, Federico, who we mentioned, Nelly Cummings, Blake Hinson, and Greg Elliott. That's not the order I ranked them. I did not rank Guillermo and Jorge 1 and 2. How would you rank these 6 guys in terms of the impact they've made, in terms of the effect they've had on Pitt's success this season, and just overall how they've been? How would you rank these 6 newcomers? Trying to think of like the best way to do it. Do I reveal one at a time? Because I actually think the top and the bottom of the list are pretty easy. I think they're very clear. I don't think you can really debate them too much. It's the middle 1, 2, 3 or so that I think you really are going to have a lot of discussion. And some of it's going to be based on recent play and performance, and some of it's going to be based on how long of a view you can take. And some of it's just going to be based on your personal opinion. And I think there are some guys who are a little more polarizing than others, or might have more polarizing performances and polarizing reputations, I guess I would say. I think like I said, I think the top and the bottom are pretty clear. I think Guillermo Diaz, or I think Jorge Diaz-Graham is your number 6 right now. I mean, he's early on, it looked like he was going to be the Diaz-Graham twin who played a lot. That has been, he's been clearly replaced by Guillermo, even though, as Jeff Cable continues to maintain or maintain for a long time, they play different positions. And I think when you look at the way they've been used, they have played different positions, sometimes on the court together, like they were in the Louisville game. Other times when Jorge plays, he's playing alongside Federico. But the Diaz-Graham twin getting the most minutes right now, and has been for the bulk of the season, or at least the ACC schedule, has been Guillermo as your number 2 center, your backup behind Federico. He's playing a lot, and he's playing well. Like Federico, Guillermo seems to keep getting better, just game by game. I had a tweet during the game on Saturday where I said that, seeing Pitt players improve is nothing new. It's what this program has been built on. So much of the success they enjoyed in the early part of this century was based on just players improving year over year, and sometimes, improvement over the course of a season. But I can't really remember anyone whose improvement has been as significant as Federico. Just based on where he started and what the expectations were to where he is now, where he's getting some talk as, being one of the better defensive centers in the ACC, which is pretty remarkable. I think Guillermo Diaz-Graham has made similar improvement, not quite as drastic and not quite as vast as Federico, but similar improvement. And just game after game, you see that confidence continuing to grow. And the thing I've appreciated about both Diaz-Graham twins is how they're willing to be aggressive and get in there and mix it up. They don't look intimidated, even when they play against bigger players, older players, guys who have a lot of size on them, guys who have a lot of experience on them, guys who they have to know it's a mismatch, and they don't back down. You know what I mean? They're not intimidated by it. They go right at it, and sometimes they get knocked around and they lose rebounds and get shots blocked and all these different things that are going to happen when you're young and as thin as they are. But they just keep going. They don't. You just can't. I think I said it before. I mean, they Chumbawamba the hell out of it out there. And they really get after it, and it's fun to watch. They're still the bottom 2 on this list: Jorge number 6 and Guillermo number 5. But it's been tremendously fun to watch those guys, and a whole lot of fun to think about where they're going to be next year and the year after that. So I think that's the bottom of these 6, and again, that doesn't mean that they've been bad, because I don't think they have by any stretch. They've had bad plays for sure. They've had the kinds of plays you expect from freshmen, but they haven't been bad players. They've been good and contributors, and Guillermo in particular, I think, has become an important part of the team and gets better every game. I think it's easy to kind of put those 2 at the bottom in spots number 5 and 6 when we're ranking the newcomers. Likewise, I think number 1, is Blake Hinson. And, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody wants to say, well, this guy or that guy. But I think Hinson is really the one who I would have to lean toward, just because of the element he brings with the outside shooting. I mean, they've got a lot of pieces on this team. What he brings, it feels like it's almost like an X factor element, and there's different guys that we've said, I think Dan Bonner said during the game on Saturday, well, if Nike Sabandi's on, this is a different team. I think you could say that, during the Carolina game, it was, well, if Nelly Cummings is on, this is a different team. And, the guy that I point to as the X factor, the one who can really change a game, if he's on. And the guy who, if he's on, this team will make a deep run is Blake Hinson. If he's feeling it, if he's shooting well, if he's able to drive and finish, if he knocks down some shots from outside and starts getting different defensive looks that he can drive against, you're going to get what you're always going to get from Jamarius Burton. But if you have Blake Hinson going, I don't, I think this is a very, very difficult team to beat and a very, very difficult team to bounce in March because he's such a unique weapon with his shooting and then his strength to kind of, as I said it on Saturday, to bully his way inside. And plus, in ACC games, he's averaging 15 and 6. He's fourth in the conference in three-point field goals made in ACC games. He's third in the conference in 3-point field goals made per game. He is, you don't see guys his size, and that's height and, bulk, who can shoot like he can. And his range is the parking lot. Who was it that said, when I get off the bus, I'm open. Blake Hinson believes that about himself, and he's knocked down some deep, deep threes. I don't think there's any question he's been the number one addition this offseason. I think he's number one on these rankings of 6 guys. But that leaves 3 others that we need to rank. Right? We've got Hinson at the top. We've got the Guillermo and Jorge at 5 and 6. We still have to find a place for Nelly Cummings, for Greg Elliott, and for Federico. And this is where I think we're going to have some debate. And this is where you might even disagree with me, because I'm going in that order. I think Nelly Cummings is number 2. I think Greg Elliott is number 3. And I think Federico, for as good as he's been and as important as he's been, is number 4. And I'll start with the separation between Elliott and Federico. Okay, and why I put Elliott above Federico. I feel like Nelly Cummings might be the polarizing one that people will argue about the most, so I'll get to him last of why he's second. But I'll start with Elliott and Federico. Federico's been great. It's been a blast to watch him develop. All those things I just said about his improvement from the start of the season to now, just how he's gotten better. It's been so much fun to watch, and it's been a huge impact on the team, particularly in light of John Hughley's virtually complete absence from this season. The way Federico has stepped into that role, the way he's grown and evolved just over the course of 25 games. Not even a full season. And he has improved to the point where he's getting talked about on an all ACC level. It's remarkable. And you wonder where this team would be without Federico. And that's probably the question we ask in any kind of ranking like this. Well, whose absence would hurt them the most? Whose presence has helped them the most? And Federico's impact is undeniable. He has been a huge part of this team's success. And I think particularly in ACC play. They building an 11-3 record, they did it with a whole lot of help from Federico. I had those stats over the last 5 games where he averages 6 and 7 and 3 blocks. And, only about 3 fouls per game and more assists than turnovers. It's remarkable play from a guy, who's as raw as he is. And he's been absolutely outstanding and essential. But I have to give the nod to Elliott because this team's success, so much of this team's success, a giant percentage of this team's success has come from shooting threes. They are a 3-point shooting team that lives and dies by the 3. Even when the shots aren't falling, they keep shooting them because they eventually will fall. And Greg Elliott is, he's 1 and 1A with Blake Hinson in that regard. And I think, I put Hinson at the top because of all the things he can do. And I'm not to say that Elliott is a one-trick pony. I think he's been a much better rebounder than I ever expected. I thought he would be a one-trick pony. It turns out he can rebound and even be a little bit scrappy and get inside for layups every now and then too. But it's that outside shooting threat, the quick trigger, the ability to catch and shoot with almost no hesitation and almost no time wasted so that even the slightest of lags in the closeout creates a wide open spot for a shot. And he's just really, really good at hitting those shots. And that's what this team's offense is based on. That's where their success has come from. It's not the only thing that's given them success, but it's the bulk of it. They are a 3-point shooting team, and Elliott, that's what he does. And it's the fact that they have Hinson, Elliott, Nelly Cummings, Nike Sabandi. They've got all these 3-point shooting weapons that makes them so dangerous that you're not going to get all 4 on at all times, but you're going to get at least 2 probably. And Elliott has been a big part of that. And I think he also has just kept getting better and better and more consistent with his shooting. I'd have to look at the stats, but sort of anecdotally, it feels like he just keeps getting more and more consistent with the shooting over the course of the ACC games. And it's been, I think it's been huge. He's 8th in the conference right now in 3-point field goals made per conference game. So he's been one of the best 3-point shooters in the league this season. And then there's Nelly Cummings. And Cummings has run hot and cold. There's no question. Jeff Capel said he's been hurt a little bit. That's why maybe he didn't make as much of an impact in the Florida State game. Didn't really play much at all in the second half against Louisville. He's been dealing with that injury. But I think with Nelly Cummings, and I think Nelly Cummings' importance was maybe even more early in the season in terms of what he meant for the team off the court. He's made a big impact on the court. I think he's been a good scorer. He's been a good leader. He's been good at setting up his teammates. He's got that outside shot. He's scrappy enough to drive for, fighting through contested layups, even though he's a smaller guy. He's great at, making outlet passes. He does a lot really, really well. But I think what he has brought to the team in terms of being a veteran guard, an experienced player who's been in the NCAA tournament, who's been through a lot. He's played, while he was at Colgate, he played at a bunch of Power 5 schools, played against a bunch of Power 5 schools. So he's got experience here. And I think he knows how to weather those ups and downs. And I think when this team was still trying to find itself early in the season, I think he was a big part of that. I think, and I don't think he was the only one. I think Jamarius Burton was a big part of that. I think Greg Elliott's energy was a big part of that. I think, these guys, there are a lot of leaders on this team, but I think Nelly Cummings brings something in terms of intangible leadership to this team that I think is huge. And so, he's 8th in the ACC in assists per game. In ACC games, he's 7th in assist to turnover ratio in ACC games. He can go off for 20 like he did against North Carolina, 21. Excuse me. But I think the leadership, the calming effect, when the team starts to get into trouble in a game, the way he's able to kind of pull them back, steady the ship, and Jamarius Burton does a great job of this too. But I think Nelly Cummings as the point guard, working with Burton, working off the ball with Burton, bringing the ball up, I think his impact on the team mindset has been so big and has been so positive and has had a whole lot to do with the success that this team has had. So that's how I would rank the newcomers. Blake Hinson, number 1. Nelly Cummings, number 2. Greg Elliott, number 3. Federico, number 4. Guillermo Diaz-Graham, number 5. And Jorge Diaz-Graham, number 6. I know that rankings like this never produce any kind of conversation or discussion or debate or dissension or disagreement. But if by chance you have your own ranking of those 6 players, I'd like to hear it. Leave it in the comments here on the YouTube page, or even better yet, go to the message boards at Panther-Lair.com and discuss it there. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. We'll be talking about it on the basketball message boards all day today, I think, and heading into the game tonight, particularly when Greg Elliott goes off or Federico goes off, and you say, "Look, Chris, you idiot, why'd you have Nelly Cummings ranked so high?" That it'll be fun to call that back. For sure, but I'd like to hear if you disagree, and maybe you disagree that Blake Hinson's the obvious number 1 and Jorge Diaz-Graham is the obvious number 6. Maybe you feel like those guys are out of place in those spots that I gave them. So let me know what you think. That's the 6 that I have: Hinson, Cummings, Elliott, Federico, Guillermo, Jorge. I'd like to hear your ranking as well. Thanks for checking out this video today. Really appreciate it. Make sure you like and subscribe while you're here. We will have a Boston College recap for you tomorrow on the Morning Pit. Late game tonight, 9 p.m., but we'll have a brand new Morning Pit episode for you first thing in the morning tomorrow. So have a great Tuesday. I hope you enjoy the game tonight if you're going or if you're watching on TV. And we'll be back with you tomorrow morning right here for the Morning Pit on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.